You are tuning in to the You Are Loved podcast, where we hope to bring love and kindness to the world.
Welcome to another You Are Loved podcast, where you can find us across both social media platforms as well as all podcasting platforms. Please make sure, if you like the video, to like and subscribe. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our amazing guest, Barbie Moreno. Barbie is a resilience coach dedicated to helping individuals navigate the intricacies of trauma, understand the science behind their responses, and find pathways to healing. With 1 in 5 adults in the United States experiencing mental illness each year and 60% reporting some form of abuse, Barbie's mission is deeply personal. Having faced her own struggles, she is on a journey to change the way we approach healing. Barbie believes the modern mental health system is fundamentally flawed. It often focuses on treating symptoms rather than addressing the whole person, their unique history, and the developmental impact of what that history on their brain. Through practical techniques grounded in empathy and compassion, Barbie guides her clients in breaking free from limiting patterns and moving towards a life of authenticity and fulfillment. Her approach integrates holistic transformation with science-based practices to create deep, personalized transformation. Welcome, Barbie. Thank you so much for hopping on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That's a mouthful, huh?
Yeah. So that's awesome. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And so what really guided you into moving into this area? Like, I know you've gone through your own stuff, but like what said, hey, I want to go ahead and start helping others?
I think that the problem with the journey was that what I found is that nobody really knew how to help me when I was going through my breakdown. Like, I went to mental health facilitators and practitioners, and they just want to put you on medication, right? And they want to give you a title. And then I would go and try other modalities, and all of them just simply treated like symptoms and didn't actually help you work through, like, why am I this way? Why did I choose I'm an overachiever. Why was I trying to overachieve? What was I trying to prove? And so the world just didn't seem like it had a space for me at that time to heal.
Okay, that makes sense. So, and then you made the decision to go ahead and say, hey, as I've gotten through this, I now want to be able to help others, right?
Exactly. I created like an online course so that I can teach people steps. Nobody's ever healed, but we are all on a journey. And so if you can take the steps to start understanding who you are and why you make the decisions you make, knowledge is power. And then you can change the way that you're reacting to the world instead of actually living in the moment and living your life to its fullest.
Yeah. I think that's great. We've had a boundaries coach on that talks a lot about that. So that's exciting. Have you written a book at all?
Yes, it's in production right now. It's with it's the publisher.
Oh, okay. All right. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Now, when you say in your bio, you talk about the mental health system being broken, like, what do you believe it's missing most, and how has that gap shaped your own healing journey and the work you do today?
So basically what I think it's missing is the story behind the symptoms, right? So they will say, like, what's going on with you? Okay, I'm depressed. So, okay, you're depressed. So what does your depression feel like? Blah, blah, blah. But they don't ask, like, why am I depressed? Like, what happened? Maybe they'll ask about, like, that current time in my life, but they don't go back and say, like, well, I had an abusive parent. I had an alcoholic parent. And so I learned to cope by being an overachiever, or I learned to cope by making myself small, or whatever it is. And now something happened in my life to trigger that. And that's causing my depression, right? So they just want to treat the symptom and not the whole history of who you are. And our mental health system, although getting a little bit better, doesn't really include tools that will help you change for the future. They just Band-Aid it for the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like, I want to know, like, I know that I have past trauma, but I want to know, how can I heal from this without medication. And
Exactly.
I want to know, what do I need to do to break this thought process that would keep popping up in my brain? And how do I heal from that and find forgiveness, so I can move on and not hold on to that hurt anymore. Right.
Exactly. And there's like physical tools for that, right? Like they don't teach us the physical tools. A lot of people haven't heard about like somatic exercise. That's amazing for releasing emotions in the body. Do you know what somatic exercise is?
Mm-mm. No.
So they're just like little movements that you do in a particular pattern and way that release emotions from your body. So I've worked with people and they're like, you're literally holding like these silly, what seems like silly movements and shifting, like, let's say your hips or whatever. And all of a sudden they'll just start crying because we have our emotions in our body, right? So if you don't release that stuff, it's going to stay there no matter how much medication you take.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because you're not releasing it, because you're just like suppressing the issue. It's no different than being like an alcoholic, and like you are just suppressing all these emotions because you don't want to deal with them. So you drink to forget about it, and then you just create other situations in yourself. So
exactly. Yeah. Gabor Mate is amazing at that because he talks about how our bodies are basically showing us what's wrong. So, if you always have chronic back pain or if you have some like disease or whatever the case may be, oftentimes it comes from not dealing with your emotions. So people say like cancer is hereditary. Well, is it hereditary or is it environmental and you got the same cancer because you lived in the same environment as your parents and never changed?
Yeah, that's crazy. I just heard that on another podcast, like yesterday or the day before, talking about that. And when it came to like cancers and stuff like that, or specific diseases, but it's maybe environmental, like within when they say it's like generational stuff or whatever, but maybe it's because your generation was, because your parents you were doing the same thing that they were doing. So obviously you're going to get the same types of issues unless you make the decision to change. Right.
Exactly. Like ALS, they say, is like the nice person's disease. So they did like a research on the people who had ALS, and it's because they're the people who are like nice to everybody. And so instead of like actually like saying no when people ask them stuff or whatever the case may be, or they go out of their way to be super nice, the people who had ALS, 90% of the people were super nice people. That's how people describe them.
Oh, wow. Interesting. That's interesting, huh? Okay, so science within itself tells us that trauma changes our brain, but obviously if that's the case, then healing can too. So what do you think are some of the most powerful ways you've seen the brain and life begin to transform when we address like what we're talking about is like the root and not just the symptoms?
Right. So as you work on changing your neural pathways, like you're rebuilding your neural pathways, then things that triggered you before won't trigger you. Right. So let's say, for instance, even like a sound can trigger somebody. So if somebody's in a restaurant and they hear somebody that sounds like their father, and maybe their father was abusive, they will go into instant survival mode simply because of the sound that sounded like their father. But as you build new neural pathways, that trigger doesn't happen anymore because you've worked on it. Right. And you've changed your brain so that no longer signals you being in survival mode.
Right, right. Okay. No, I love that. And yeah, I think that's great because all of us have some kind of trigger. And I think maybe the first step, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is like acknowledging the fact that you have triggers in the first place.
Yep.
Because a lot of people live in denial, and I'm just always like, okay, for years, like, especially in my 20s and stuff like that, when I would first meet people, especially if it was like one of my friends, I would immediately shut down and be super cold to people. And they were like, oh, that's just Jackie. But it wasn't. It was just this overwhelming anxiety, and I had no idea that's what it was. And I was like, and I always would think, why am I like this? Why can't I just be more open? But as I got used to people and know them and stuff like that, then I could open up, and then people that know me really well, and they're like, you don't seem like you're antisocial, Jackie. And I was like, well, because I find my comfort zone, and then I can open up and be free,
Right. So the question comes from what happened to you so that you had to feel like you have to shut down immediately, that people are going to hurt you, and that the only way that you allow them into your life is once they prove that they're not going to hurt you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That's where we go with that.
Yeah. So, and then that would have gone back to like, sexual trauma and stuff like that when I was young. So,
protect you, or the family that's supposed to be able to be there for you, they don't do that. Right. And so then you learn that people are not there for you.
Yeah, yeah. So, or yeah, and not feeling safe, right? Or protected. So when you do go through, and like all of us, are pretty resilient. So, and resilience isn't just about bouncing back, like what you're talking about. It's like living differently.
Yeah.
So, what do you think it's resilient has come to mean to you personally, like as you've gone through this trajectory?
So for me, resilience isn't really like, okay, I can take on more crap, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like you can just keep adding stuff onto my plate and I'm resilient, so I'm just going to keep going forward, going forward. It's more of being able to rebuild in myself the tools that I can use to change patterns that I see are hurting me, or making a difference, different choice in my life. So it's actually the part of me that changes things, so that I no longer are just accepting the way that people are treating me. That I actually have, like you said, you had a boundary person, right? Boundaries are using your resilience, but it does no good if you don't hold those boundaries, or if you don't
Yeah.
know why you need them, right? That's like a big,
Yeah.
why do I need this? What is it that about this boundary that makes me feel safe?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
So
um,
resilience is about getting to know yourself.
yeah, and then but I think and this is I'm referring to like healthy boundaries, not just like putting a wall up and shutting people out, you know what I mean? And like being unemotional. It's just really healthy boundaries that helps to build the relationship between you and that other person, because they have a better understanding as to where each other stands, you know?
Yeah, and that's why I always say resilience is not the ability to endure, but it's the courage to transform, right?
Oh, I love that. Not the ability to endure, but the courage to transform.
Yep.
Okay.
I always feel like that's a big aha, right? Because when people think of resilience, they think, okay, you can endure, da 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 da. But it's really the courage to transform.
Okay. So, how do you now how do you help your clients begin to distinguish between, what they've experienced and what they internalized about themselves because of it?
So I recently kind of changed my model, because before I did one-on-one coaching with just basically anybody, but now
Uh-huh.
I actually have people have to go through my 30-day course so they can begin to identify their triggers through it. And then
Mhm.
after that, they're welcome to come and coach with me. But the first step, like you said before, is knowledge, right? So people need to do that deep dive to kind of get some information, and then we can talk about, like, where did that come from and what did you learn from your deep dive? Because like you said, a lot of people don't even know that they're doing it, right? We just kind of move through the world and we don't really understand that we're putting up this wall here, that we're sabotaging. Sabotage is a huge thing.
Huge. Yeah.
But there's so many people who get to right where they want to be, and then somehow, because they don't feel worthy, they just throw it all away, they quit,
Mm.
right? So we got to figure out what's going on before we actually get into the work itself. So I always try to give tips and advice, like on social media, things like that. But the truth is, you actually have to do the homework.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Years ago, I dated this guy who was extremely artistically talented. He was, everybody's friend. He was a nice guy. But he just his follow through was just terrible. Like he would like created this whole graphic novel which was amazing, and he drew it out and all this stuff, but he just would never take it. And he had friends at comic stores and all this stuff, but he would never take it and put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, why don't you have all these people that would blow you up. Why don't you take advantage of that? And they believe in you and they love you. Like, just go and like allow people to see your gift, And he just held it in. And I think, and because he was ADHD and like just all over the place all the time. So I feel like he self sabotaged a
Yeah.
lot. So,
Well, what happens is success is scary.
yeah.
Because if he put himself out there, then people can critique him,
Yeah.
right? So as
Yeah.
soon as you put yourself out there, you open yourself up for other people's opinions.
Yeah.
And if you haven't healed, those opinions will break you. Think about social media,
Mm,
meanest things on social media. And so if you take that and absorb it to be true, then it's gonna break down your self-worth.
mm. Yeah, that's so true. But as we know, in today's social media, it can definitely destroy people. Um, but some negative comments here or there. People are, everybody has their own reference points, everybody has their own opinion and so forth. But sometimes, like, hey, if I'm getting activity, I'm getting activity, good or bad.
Yeah, this is say that there's no, what is there, no negative like media or something like that.
No negative advertising or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And I think as long as you remember that if somebody's comment is mean, it's probably because at some point in their life they were hurt, something happened to them, right? So they're not negative just because they want to be negative. And it's not to excuse people's behaviors, but people they're not born mean. Things happen to you. And you're not born to say negative things to people. It's the life that you have experienced that causes you to perceive life that way. And so then you project it onto other people.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So with that, so you emphasize the importance of understanding the science behind trauma responses. Could you elaborate on some of like the scientific principles or psychological frameworks that inform your coaching methodology? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing starts with like what we call lizard brain, right? So as soon as something triggers you, instead of going into like your thought process, you go into survival mode. So if you understand that as soon as something happens, you go into survival mode because our brain is built to survive. It's not built for happiness. It's built for survival. That is its only thing it's built for. So you go into survival mode, and then in survival mode, you can't make decisions. Have you ever like heard of like they say, it's like telling somebody who is drowning, just swim. And it's like, duh, like they would swim if they could remember to swim, but they're in survival mode, right? So you start with like, that's the amygdala, right? So they're in survival mode. And then as you progress out of survival mode into like thinking mind, then you can make more rational decisions. But if you don't know how to get yourself out of survival mode, you can't make a rational decision. And that's where the tools come in, like a round of breath. Just a simple round of breath will change you from survival mode up into the next ability to function, into your cortexes and stuff like that.
Yeah. I've definitely learned that when someone's annoying me or being irritating or something, or trying to like push my buttons, that I just smile and get silent and just look at them.
Well, I mean, at least you don't like go back and forth with them anymore, right? Like,
now, I mean, every once in a while I will, but especially if it's over a game of dominoes, but just joking around or whatever. But no, like if I know like it's just definitely not going to be a good situation, I just stay quiet and smile.
The question is then what happens inside your body though? Does it tense? Like, are you annoyed with them?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely tense up for sure.
So then that changes the way that your body is. Remember, we were talking about holding on to emotions.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. That's why those tools like breathing, it will take away the tension in your body. It will change the way that your heart rate, like if you're tensing, then your heart's going to be beating faster. Your blood pressure is going to go up. Those are all things that eventually are going to cause you more harm. So that's why like things like breath work. There's like a stop. Where there a lot of people teach it where like you stop, you see it as a red light, and then you make adjustments until you can get back to green, things like that. Or what can I see, what can I smell, what can I hear to get me back into a place where I'm not like feeling it in my body and it's changing my chemistry so that it's actually hurting me.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yesterday I was dealing with some anxiety and I had like these racing thoughts and stuff like that. So I would start doing breathing and just breathing in and out. And I was like, okay, you just need to breathe. Like it was my way to be able to release it and get calm and stuff like that. So can you hear anyone in the background?
No, I can't hear anybody.
Okay, perfect. All right.
And so like something else that people don't realize is just rocking. So have you ever seen like children who just like rock back and forth? It regulates the nervous system. Telling them to be quiet. Yeah. No, so like just rocking regulates your nervous system. So if you just like gently rock back and forth, it will help.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, here's the thing I was talking about before, which was forgiveness. So that seems to play a significant role in your approach to healing, which is extremely important. So like once someone's able to identify like where this is coming from and really kind of deep dive into their selves and their life and so forth, how do you guide individuals through the process of forgiving themselves and others for past trauma?
Right. So forgiving others is that's more important on a lot of different levels, because most people don't even realize what they've done to you. So you know how like you're having a conversation with somebody and you'll bring up something that happened in the past. They're like, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Because to them it wasn't important, but to you somehow you hung on to it, right? So
Yeah.
you have to let it go, because you're just hurting yourself by keeping yourself upset about that. And they don't care. To be honest, most of them don't care. There's even people who, have abused people and they're like, well, I was having a hard time, or that's how I grew up. A lot of people, especially in our generation, their parents were beaten. And so then their excuse for beating their kids is, well, that's how I grew up, right? So you're never going to get them to say sorry. So you have to learn to just say, like, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to forgive them. I may not forget, and I don't have to have them in my life, but I'm going to forgive them, because by not forgiving them, it's only hurting me.
Yeah.
And the same goes for self-forgiveness. Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. So if you didn't know better at that time, you did the best that you could at that time.
Yeah.
You have to forgive yourself, because once you knew better, you did better.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. Yeah. So I'm always like, just trying to do better, because I know that I'm like, or at least way more messed up than I am today. And I'm thankful that I've been able to go through a lot of healing, So
Yeah. I mean, I love your message. You are loved. Like, what
thank you.
an amazing message, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When I was growing up, I've shared this before in another podcast, but when I was growing up, before I hung up the phone with my mom and stuff like that, if I was being a brat and I was just like, bye, and I hung up the phone, I had to call her back, and I just had to tell her I loved her, because if not, I was always afraid of this fear, like, what if something happens to my mom? And the last thing, I was being a jerk and I didn't tell her I loved her. Like, that would just be awful to me,
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes I go back to the idea that I still have this thought in my mind, and maybe it's something I need to work on. It's the parents' responsibility to make it okay.
Yeah.
Because that's their job. So like if I have a teenage daughter, and she drives me absolutely insane right now, but it's my job to go back to her and let her know I'm there to support her no matter what. I'm there for her. Now, if you don't have a parent who will do that, then you have to learn to do that for yourself. And you can't expect them to do something they're not capable of.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. We are putting together a children's workbook for kids, and we're excited about it. It's called Unapologetically Me. And we are putting a lot of questions in there to help elementary school children to be able to build their self-esteem and know who they are and how worthy they are at a young age. And I dealt with bullying and stuff like that in school and middle school, and even a little bit in elementary school and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay. And then a lot of times as adults, which is where you come in, right? It's like, okay, how do we deal with all that past trauma with people that buried it and didn't know how to manage that and how to overcome it? And so we're putting some stuff together to help with learning how to deal with individuals and situations, and how to, forgive, and how to move on and still be healthy emotionally,
Yeah. I love that, because I really believe that if we start with the children, then we'll have less messed up adults, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
He doesn't come out of the womb feeling unworthy. That's the world that teaches them that they're not worthy, right? And so you have to reprogram them. And if you start young, like you guys are doing, they won't have so much to work on when they get older.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll put me out of business. No.
No. Plus, there's enough messed up adults. I don't think you'll be out of business for a long time.
I wish the world was healed and I didn't have a job.
You said you what?
I wish the world was healed and I didn't have a job.
And then you'd be out of a job. Yeah. I was reading my Bible yesterday, and I keep starting these different Bible study plans. I have to start back to Genesis. So I was reading the one where it was like with Adam and Eve. And then after they took a bite out of the fruit that was of the forbidden tree. And then all of a sudden they realized they were naked, but before they never knew it. So I was like a little baby that like will run around, throw its diaper off and run around, because it has no concept of like all the stuff that society tells us is wrong. And they don't even realize that. And even at like 2 years old, 3 years old, whatever, because they're in the safety and confinement of their family home,
Right.
as long as no traumas happen and stuff like that, and they're in a safe environment, then they don't close up. But as soon as trauma enters that, or the parents are like, okay, no more running around naked,
Right.
it's like, and ripping your diaper off, they don't realize that that's a wrong thing. And they're just like, just being a baby and running around. I feel like a lot of us it's like we're so innocent and pure, like what you're talking about, like when you're not born that way. And it's like, it's like, whatever, it's experiences, reference points, life, people, whatever, that develop us into that. So
yeah, they're great until shame is introduced into life.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as you start getting shamed for being who you are, that's when it all starts.
Yeah.
That's why we all love babies and dogs, like puppies, right?
Yes.
They're always happy. They're always happy. Like little toddlers are like, you see them in the store and you're like, oh, you're so cute. The parents like, no, she just threw herself on the ground, had a fit, but
yeah,
but they're cute. I mean, they're innocent, and that's why we love them.
Yeah. So what is, besides the book that you are writing right now, which I'd love to know, like what where people can find more information. And I definitely want to learn a bit about your program. But first, what is one book or resource that has had a profound impact on you personally or professionally? And like, why do you think that is?
So actually, a lot of this started with Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce D. Perry wrote a book called What Happened to You. And it's a fantastic book because it actually talks about a lot of the stuff I talk about, like with the neural pathways and all those different things. And the idea behind it, because obviously Oprah, anybody who knows her story knows that she was abused as a child and all of those different things. And Dr. Bruce D. Perry is a psychiatrist that works with children who have had severe abuse. And the idea behind it is that basically everything that you're doing is just to protect yourself, right? So instead of saying like, what's wrong with me, you say, what happened to me? And you reflect on that instead of thinking and getting down on yourself, like, why would I do that? I'm so dumb. Da, 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 da. You say to yourself, what happened to me? And then that's why I'm doing that. Okay, now I understand that's why I'm doing that. Now I can do something about it.
So very that.
And I love Gabor Mate. I mentioned him before. He's my science person. So if you ever I'm a science geek. So if you ever really want to know like the science behind it, he's fantastic.
What did you end up doing in corporate America before you started this?
So I worked at Wells Fargo Private Bank. I was what's called a private mortgage banker. And so that's, the corporate world where you work with all the very, very rich people. And I did the mortgages for them. And I mean, that was the elite place to be. I actually kind of half-ass landed in that job. I don't even know.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they came and asked for me to be there, and it was because of my drive, right? But my drive was based on me trying to prove something. So I was leaders club, I was at the top, but it wasn't because, I enjoyed the job. It was because I wanted to prove I was worthy.
Yeah. Yes. I hate it when I start putting myself in that trap of like having to prove myself and wanting to say, look, I'm enough. Like, can't you see me? I'm not invisible,
Yeah, and I love that you're saying I'm enough, because that's something people don't feel. That's why we have to buy expensive handbags and we have to have these big houses and these cars, because we're just trying to be loved. Like your thing says, you are loved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your program, and then I'd love to know like where people can follow you and stuff like that. And then I have another question for you after that.
Okay, perfect. So everything can be found on my website, which is my name, Barbie, like the Barbie doll. And I am married to a Ken. So I always love to tell people that because it's fun. So it's Barbie Moreno, Moreno.com. And everything that I do is under my title, From Wounds to Wisdom. So I have a podcast called From Wounds to Wisdom. My book is From Wounds to Wisdom. My course is From Wounds to Wisdom, because basically that's what it is, right? As soon as you learn, then you have wisdom about it, and then you don't do it again. So that's how they can find me. Instagram is Barbie Resilience Coach, and Facebook is Barbie Resilience Coach. Basically everything's Barbie Resilience Coach.
Okay, I love that. Barbie and Ken. That's great.
Yeah, I know. I absolutely hate it.
You said who hates it?
My kids. I mean, imagine your kids being Barbie and Ken. Like, it's very annoying to them.
Did you take him to watch the movie?
No, we've never seen it. Everybody asks us that. We've never seen it.
I'm just kidding. I just thought it would have been funny if you would have taken him to it just to irritate them. But I haven't seen it either. So, but you've turned pain into purpose, but more importantly, you've chosen to help others do the same, which I think is just absolutely amazing because so many of us need that. Like, what do you hope your legacy of healing and resilience will help inspire others? Will inspire. And let me start this over. What do you hope your legacy of healing and resilience will inspire in others?
That you were born worthy and you're enough, no matter what.
Okay. I love that. Born worthy and you are enough. Okay. I love that.
Simple.
I love that. Barbie, is there any last like famous quotes or anything you'd like one of your favorite quotes or anything that you'd like to share?
Again, my favorite is from Maya Angelou.
Okay.
When you know better, you do better. And as long as we can look at that for others and ourselves, then we can forgive and we can forgive ourselves.
Okay. Well, Barbie, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have an amazing day.
I appreciate you.
Okay. All right. Bye. Everyone, thank you so much for hopping on and another amazing You Are Loved podcast. I think I'm going to title this What Happened to Me. Stay tuned for all of our journals and our podcasts. We do have a 21-day transformational journal, and you can actually get it free at youarelovedjournal.com. And you get some extra goodies and stuff like that with it as well. But have an amazing day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of You Are Loved. If you have any topic ideas or would like to be a guest on the show, please hit us up on Instagram at youareloved.store.